I felt very, very weak.
Coughing most of times.
It is one of the infectious disease which is very difficult to treat.
I lost weight, I suffered sweating and fever.
About a third of the world population is latently infected.
It is a very clever bacteria, so it can take the person's immune system and use that to create its perfect conditions.
The aim is actually to make a world which is tuberculosis free, but it's a long way to go, but we have to.
Tuberculosis keeps killing silently. According to the World Health Organization, in 2016, more than 10 million people were diagnosed with the disease. The previous year, some 1.8 million people died from it. Tuberculosis is still among the top 10 main causes of death globally. It's a pandemic which requires new tools to control it, notably shorter and more efficient treatments. That's precisely the aim of a research project in which dozens of African and European scientists are working together. One of the project's cornerstones is this hospital for tuberculosis patients in northern Tanzania.
70 patients have been forced to make this hospital their home, sometimes for months. Some are in complete isolation. They're considered highly infectious. Others are in wards waiting for treatment to beat the bacteria. A few patients have been treated more than once.
The first time, the first time I sat with this, I don't know exactly the name of the tablets, but the first time I started without injection, but the second time they started me straight away with the injections. Yeah, so I did get 56 injections every day. Early in the morning I get injection, then and tablets.
The standard medication for tuberculosis is a mix of 4 different drugs. Treatment can vary from 6 to 18 months.
I'm 800 kilometers from my home and my 6 children. I can't be with them as I need to pursue my treatment here.
But such treatments can pave the way for side effects and the development of multi-resistant bacteria. The toll on patients, their families and health systems is huge.
The duration is very long. You know, when someone has TB, of course, there is a support for the drugs, but the system does not support patients for fare and other issues. So patients, many patients may fail to comply to come to the health facilities and take those treatment for 6 months. And that may lead to development of drug resistance.
In a bid to shorten existing treatments, the hospital has teamed up with this nearby research facility. Clinical trials have been partially conducted here as part of a European research project called Panacea, developed under the umbrella of the European Developing Clinical Trial Partnership. Patients receive higher doses of different molecules to see if bacteria can be eradicated faster, while at the same time ensuring the patients are safe and can tolerate the medicine.
First, we determine if the bacteria is resistant to antibiotics or receptive to them. And then we make cultures of those bacteria for further analysis, all from samples taken at the hospital.
So far, results have shown that tripling the dose of one of the drugs being used in the clinical trial, rifampicin, could safely speed up the eradication of the bacteria.
How this drug is really distributed in the system, and as well as looking at how this drug suppresses the microbial within the system.
The project is being coordinated from this hospital in the Netherlands. The number of new cases of tuberculosis, or incidence rate, in the European Union is much lower than in Africa. Despite that, half a dozen tuberculosis patients at various stages of the disease are being treated here.
Zodat ik naar de GGD ben gestuurd.
I had to go through many different tests and doctors gave me a treatment. But then I got a second episode of the disease and they had to increase the medical regime.
In an attempt to move forward, the project has reached out to new clinical trials. The goal is to develop these with improved microbiological markers and modelling techniques. Researchers say the stakes are high.
All these programs, they are trying to get these patients for 6 months, isn't it? So imagine it's 4 months or 3 months, what it saves in terms of cost, of time of the programs, and of the compliance of the patient, because you're much more expected to be compliant if you only have to be treated for 3 months than if you're treated for 6 months.
Building on what they already know, the scientists hope the second phase of the project will involve some 800 patients from 6 African countries. Just like previous clinical trials, researchers want to understand how patients' bodies react to higher doses of existing drugs. But now they also want to assess how safe and efficient the newly developed compounds are.
We need to know what is the actual amount of drug that is taken in by the patient that really enters the blood, and the amount of drug that is in the blood will reach the site of infection. So by measuring and sampling blood, we can estimate better what's happening at the site of infection.
The project is now looking at ways to broaden the scope of the clinical trials to African countries heavily affected by the disease, but which so far have limited capacity in terms of staff and research infrastructure to make this possible. This is the case for Malawi, one of the poorest countries on earth. On average, 50 people come to this clinic in the south of the country every day, showing obvious signs of the disease.
As in other parts of Africa, the HIV virus is helping to fuel the spread of TB. The tuberculosis bacteria can remain latent in the body for years, waiting for the best moment to act. HIV-positive patients have such weak immune systems that tuberculosis finds no obstacle, thriving in them.
I was coming for HIV treatment, and during I skipped the treatment for a long time. Then when I was starting again, it's when they discovered me with signs and symptoms of tuberculosis.
If somebody is HIV positive, any cough of any duration, that is an indication. And any associated symptoms like loss of body weight, night sweats, makes us to investigate for tuberculosis.
And yet Malawi still lacks basic tools to fight the disease. In the economic capital Blantyre, there are only 2 functioning chest X-ray machines for a population of about 1 million people. Urgent solutions are needed.
We have TB incidence at around 160 per 100,000, and it's still a very big problem that most people are affected by the disease. And what fuels this disease in this country is poverty and living in overcrowded conditions.
Building better research facilities is seen as a key priority so that the country can participate properly in regulated clinical trials. The project is also bringing its skills to bear.
In order to build expertise, you really have to have good young Malawians with a specialist interest in research that's going to allow them to stay in that speciality in a way that's exciting for them and in a way that makes being a researcher sufficiently well paid to make it worthwhile.
But what can those with tuberculosis expect from this research? Davey, a 47-year-old machine operator, was diagnosed in 2016. In the future, he says he simply hopes that patients with the disease won't have to go through his ordeal.
I couldn't work for half a year. I had no salary. My family was only able to survive on the generosity of some friends. Treatments shorter than 6 months could make a big difference.
Researchers say they hope their work will eventually contribute to reaching the World Health Organization target of globally reducing the number of new tuberculosis cases by 80% by 2030.